So we live in a world where actions have consequences. You take an action, there's going to be a reaction. And there's a fantastic quote from Napoleon Bonaparte that says, "Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake." Interestingly enough, most people think that's a Sun Tzu quote. It's not. In any event, as I've mentioned in previous videos, this is not the first time that the United States has taken such action. And when the United States has taken such action, it's led to a distracted superpower. The United States will go in, will get excited, but then ultimately will find itself in what we call a quagmire, inside this sort of quicksand of having to deal with it, and it distracts the ability of the Washington policymakers and the decision makers from doing much else. And if you look over the course of the last several days, since the United States went into Venezuela, there's been very little commentary out of Beijing, or for that matter, out of Moscow. And I think this is done for the very explicit reason that they don't need to do anything. I've had clients ask me, what do you think China will do? And my response to every one of those questions is, they'll do nothing. They don't need to. What I do believe will happen, and most likely is already taking place, is China has been very effective over the course of the last, well, really 10 years, but within the last, 4 or 5 years, of being able to make a comparison of its role in the world versus that of America. And again, as I've highlighted elsewhere, the United States has historically always talked about these international rules-based order, but we can now see, especially with the actions taken on Venezuela, that that is an enormous amount of hypocrisy. Because numerous nations since the 3rd of January have gone to the Trump administration and said, can you please provide us with an explanation of why? And the American government, the Trump administration, simply said, because we can. What you find is that China, Russia, and elsewhere will say, well, can you help us better understand how this is any different than Russia invading Ukraine? Now, this is not a situation where one or the other are to be compared or should be compared, but there is an argument to be made that if you are condemning, let's say, Russia for the actions they've taken with Ukraine, then it stands to reason that the same should be the case for the United States going into Venezuela. So when you look at it from a geopolitical competitive standpoint, the United States has already been embroiled with Gaza, with the Israelis, with Iran. We've seen over the course of the last 12 months that there has been a number of these geopolitical events that have taken place led by the Trump administration. And virtually in every case, China's done nothing, because there is this willingness by the Beijing leadership, in my opinion, that the best thing that can be done is to allow the Americans to go out, allow the Americans to make their mistakes, and allow the Americans then to have to spend time, allocate energy, allocate resources to all of this misadventurism. All the while, China will use this hypocrisy to its advantage and say, if you would like, we offer a different world view. You can work with us. We're simply looking to be able to engage in commerce, to make money. We have these bilateral relationships. And I believe, especially in Latin America, that there will be a more open willingness to listen to that message now, because the alternative is an aggressive America. And the world, I think they're finished with that approach to the world.